that is going to bring us on to the black cards, back to commons, back to cheap cards. No, let's try that again. Corrupt Conviction. This one's a reprint, single black mana for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you sacrifice a creature, you draw 2 cards. All right, so single mana, sack a thing, draw 2 cards.
Yeah, we've seen this before, Village Rites.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, I actually think I might kind of like this card here.
Oh, okay. With the many things that we've seen that make multiple bodies.
Yeah, there's just like we're getting to black now, and it's specifically with a lot of the black stuff. Like they're kind of small, kind of dorky. There's a ton of removal in the set, so like leaving up a black mana and like blowing out a removal spell seems pretty good. Like even we talked about answers to a single mana -1 -0 draw card.
Yep.
Clean answer to that.
There you go. All right, on the next card, we'll get a little bit of a sneak peek here, but next card we're gonna look at actually does play pretty well with it. It's like one of those 1 mana 1/1s that sacks into something. This is a card that's never gonna be like I got 7 of them and they're great. There is an Active Treason at uncommon, and it's a pretty solid one, so something to look out for there. But it's a card you play like one of. I think you can probably, if the format is good for it, you're usually fine playing the first, and sometimes you have a deck that's awesome to play the second one in. But
this thing double spells really well.
It does. That's true. Not only because it's cheap, but it draws you more cards to help you double spell more. Might be the best Corrupted Conviction format we've had. I think that's like pretty safe to say almost.
Yeah, I'm still just gonna give it a C.
Yeah,
so,
no,
like,
exactly. Yeah, I was even gonna go a little bit lower and C minus.
Okay,
but. Yeah, it's always nice when there's new context for these kind of cards. Although, to be fair, last time we saw it, I think one of the last times was Call Time, and that also had a double spell.
It was in March of the Machines too.
That's true. That wasn't great there. Anyways, yeah,
right there.
Has potential. Let's just put it that way. Especially with the next card, Nezumi Link Breaker. This is single black mana for a 1/1 Warlock. Good types. And when it dies, you make a mercenary token. Yeah. This is nice. Yeah.
Really good.
I've heard I don't know, I was talking, I can't remember where I was, but I was either listening to or reading people talk about this card, and they seem pretty down on it. I think maybe the conversation wasn't just as centered around how good mercenary tokens are as we were, and they were saying, oh, this looks like one of the lesser versions of this kind of card we've seen. I don't think so. I think this is one of the better versions we've seen. Making a mercenary token, that's real big. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still not going. I do think this format's going to be a lot about value. I think in some other formats this could creep into somewhere like in the B- category, but I'm going to give it a C+.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we'll just go to the next one. Okay, this is a big one. Both like just good card. You're gonna have to think about this card when you're playing against black. Skullduggery, single black mana for an instant. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+1, and target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1.
Yeah, this is absolutely nutty combat trick.
Yeah, it's so versatile. It does so much stuff. Like at a very baseline level, it's +2/+2 for 1 mana. That's not bad. Kills the next one. You can do a thing where you like win a combat in 2 places. You get +1/+1 to something, -1 to something else. It's a real nightmare to play against. This is like one of the best, if not the best, black common last time we saw it, which was like nearly a decade ago, to be clear. But I think this one has not lowered in power as power is scaled up. I'm going to give Skullduggery a B- to start with.
Yeah, like it commits crimes. It double spells pretty easily because it's 1 mana. It holds up your mana on the opponent's turns, but it's an instant. Like,
great card.
Is B- like high enough? Is it like a B?
Yeah, it could be. I will stick with B- because there's not a ton of X1s in this set, like aside from the mercenary tokens, which is good to pick one of those off. It's not a bad thing, but not like you're not getting a full card's worth of value. But I could see it being there. So
okay, all right, I'll join you at B-.
Desert's Dew is up next. This is nice. Black actually gets good removal in this set. It's not always the case, but it's a removal color. 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. It gets an additional -1/-1 for each desert you control.
Yeah, so I think you want deserts.
Yes, that's true.
Like 2 mana -2/-2 without upside
is
not quite good enough these days. But once you get to -3/-3, it's good. Once you get to -4/-4, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Want to give someone like a C plus? If you have deserts?
Yeah, just C plus, just assuming like a normal average amount of deserts.
Yeah, I think that looks good to me. Desperate
Sure.
Bloodseeker up next. 2 and a black for a 1/1 vampire with lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, target player mills 2. So you can commit a crime on your opponent or fill up your grave. All on your 2/2 lifelinker.
Yep. Another card I really like, a lifelink, pumps with mercenaries really well,
Mm-hmm.
commits crimes, does everything I want. Another C plus.
Yeah, I like that too. And we're, just for those listening along that have been listening to this whole thing or, going video to video, as we get into the later colors, black, red, and green, we do tend to go a little bit quicker just because we've tread upon all the mechanics, right? I think people kind of know the context of what's going on here. So forgive us if it seems like we're just like brushing over these cards and not taking a lot of time. Kind of expect you to have listened to the previous part. And if you haven't, go listen to those other videos. All right, fake your own death. Oh, good. Yeah.
You know what? It's probably worth it. There's a couple cards that have some extra context we haven't talked about, and this is actually one of them.
Okay,
right?
sure.
So targeting your opponent as a cute way to commit a crime is nice, but targeting yourself is often going to be relevant in this set too, right? Like there's a lot of reanimates.
Yep.
In black and green and a little bit red as well. So the fact that you can just randomly turn on like either stuff that wants creatures in the graveyard or something you want to mill something specific. The default for this is probably going to be to mill yourself, I think, and like unless you really need to commit a crime there.
Yes, that's a really good distinction because I think people auto feel are like people tend to be afraid of milling themselves. They're like, oh, I mill my good cards. No, there is a chance you mill your good cards, but there's also just as likely of a chance that you mill to your good cards, right? That's always the thing to think about. And it's even more likely that you mill your opponent and they actually get something good in their graveyard. It's an advantage for them. So not only does it actually have like close to no effect on yourself if you mill yourself, it's just like a wash. You're gonna be you're advantaging your opponent if you mill them sometimes. So you're the default. All right, fake your own death. This is another reprint. 1 in a black for an instant. Target creature gains +2/+0. Or target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this dies, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token.
Yeah, so last time we saw this was in Streets of New Capenna, where not only was there Blitz that comboed really well with this, but there was also like Corrupt Court Official, like some cheap ETBs. And even though there's a ton of value in this set, not a lot of it is ETB value, I find. Like there's some, but not as much as I would have kind of hoped for.
Not as much as in some sets. Yeah. Okay. I still think it's one of the better variants of this kind of effect. Like making a treasure token +2, like that's all good and important stuff.
Okay, so well, I guess maybe we'll disagree on this. Well, like, what do you want to give it?
I was gonna give it a C-.
Okay, yes. Well, fine. All
right, we got Mourner's Surprise up next. 1 in a black for a sorcery. Return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. You make a mercenary token. Yeah, pretty simple card. Buy something back. It's like a little tiny gravedigger, but it's a mercenary.
Yeah, can't cast this on turn 2 really. So we saw a very similar card in Brothers War. That set had a lot of self-milling, and that card still wasn't amazing.
It wasn't. It's true, but I think a mercenary is a reasonable upgrade over just an artifact token, one artifact.
Yep. Like artifact was relevant there too, but I do agree that mercenary is better.
Yeah.
This is somewhere between C and C+.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give it a C. I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this is a little bit better than makeshift welding. I feel like that was called something welding, but not enough to be like a
emergency welding.
Emergency welding. Thank you. Yeah. Not enough to be like a half ladder grade or anything better. This next one has caused some debates. This is Raven of the Fell Omens, or Raven of Fell Omens. 1 in a black for a 1/2 flyer. Whenever you commit a crime, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Only triggers once per turn, though. So I want to hear the Marc take on this before I say anything.
Yeah, it's been I pay fairly close attention to your Discord during spoiler season, and I try to keep a lot of my opinions to myself because I feel like this is the forum for me to discuss that and give people something to look forward to and not influence proceedings. But I started off discarding this when I saw it during previews, and your Discord members have successfully piqued my interest.
Okay. Yeah.
like draining is
It's good.
always been better than what we think.
It's
right?
true. Yeah, I think so. So the comparison I would make is like the Flame Breather from Crimson Vow, 1 red, 1/3. That whenever you cast instant or sorcery, you deal your opponent 1 damage. So you lose out on a point of toughness, and that card was like okay. It was like solid in the blue-red deck. You lose out on a point of toughness. You gain flying. You gain a life gain. You also lose out on being able to trigger like multiple times a turn, but it is easier to trigger this than that card. I think it's going to end up being fine. Like I think it's not going to be a great card. It's not going to be a bad card. I think this will be a fine 2-drop for your black deck. I'm going to give it a C.
Yeah. So yeah, basically your Discord talked me up from a D to a C, which is a big difference.
Yep.
But I agree with you. It's a C. Yeah.
Cool. And then we got another birdie here, Black Snag Buzzard, 2 and a black for a 2/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, if a creature died this turn, it's got plot for 1 and a black. This one I'm not excited
kind of
about.
cute, where it's like you can plot it for cheaper, but then they know it's coming, so it's harder to trigger it. So
Yeah.
just an interesting way they've designed these plot cards.
And like when you do the thing, it's a 3/2 flyer for 2 or 3, and that's like okay, sure, whatever. Like 3/2 flyer, like 3/2 flyer for 2. If it was actually that, would be good. But you're never casting this, or very, very, very rarely casting this on turn. Oh no, you're never casting this on turn 2 for as a 3/2. So I'm gonna give this a D. I think it's like very filler.
Okay, I wrote D plus just because I think all the black cards so far are kind of like cheap, and I do think there might be like a blue black really low to the ground curve deck, where if you can like plot this on turn 2 and turn 3 you can like skullduggery a combat and get this out, and like there's a world where I can see this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll end up giving it that half a letter grade as the set goes on. Vault Plunderer. This is a banger. 2 and a black for a 3/1 human rogue. When it enters the battlefield, target player draws a card and loses a life. Wow. So it does die to skullduggery. I'll give it that, but it's a Phyrexian Rager where a point of toughness has been shifting to its power. I think that's an upside. It's a rogue. That's an upside. Also can trigger crimes if like you have enough payoffs in the battlefield. It's not going to be a thing you do often, but like just of note, end of the game kind of thing. I think this card's great.
Yeah, I mean you can kill your opponent if they're
yeah,
one,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, the Phyrexian Rager can't do that.
I'm not. I mean, you kind of pish posh this earlier, but I do think that this card's going to be significantly better in pod draft because the cards you don't want to see across this are Link Breaker, Skullduggery, like the Raven. You know, like all these small things that power 1 toughness, that punish 1 toughness creatures. But yeah, I think this card's good.
No, I think it's a very relevant academic point that is good in pod draft. I only pish poshed it because as a joke, because I do think there are enough people where it's going to be relevant that is the thing. People draft for their local game stores still. It is still a thing that happens, some legends say. So yeah, want to give it a B?
A B?
Yeah.
Oof. No.
Okay. You want to give it a B minus, a C plus? You're gonna go C plus on this?
I was between C plus and like Phyrexian Rager wasn't even that great in DMU, and that was like a really slow format.
No, but I think the point of toughness shifting to the power. Okay, you know, yeah, I take it back. I agree. Now that I think about it, I was like, okay, but attack's better. But there's also just like a lot of mercenaries running around. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna give it a B minus. I don't think I'm gonna go lower than that, but yeah. Okay.
I'll stick with C plus.
Cool. Boneyard Desecrator up next. 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/4 mercenary zombie. It's got menace. Has the ability 1 and a black, sack a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on the Desecrator. If it was an outlaw that you sacrificed, you make a treasure token. So another example of, hey, this card sucked before. Let's make it a little bit better. Usually these are like 3/3s, and they don't naturally have menace. And we got a 4 mana, 3/4 menace that also gives you a bit of a bonus when you sack the thing sometimes.
Didn't we just recently have a 3/3 that sacked things for single mana? Wasn't it an LCI that sacked things for 1 mana?
Sure. It was less mana, but the body itself was worse. The upgrade here is that the body is better, and I think that's a more relevant upgrade.
But Do you like this card at all?
No.
Okay.
I don't at all. I think it's still pretty bad. It doesn't solve any of the problems that the other cards had.
Okay, because yeah, like if this sacked for single black, I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I'm more interested in it then, but as it is, still like a D, right?
Yeah, a D. Yeah, like if it was, yeah, it'd be well. Obviously, if the card was different, it would be better. But I think they could have done that. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if my grandma was what's the line? You know what I'm talking about? My grandma was a
If she
bicycle.
had wheels, she would have
Yeah,
been a
she had
bike.
wheels, she would have
Yeah.
been a bike. Yeah, exactly. All right. Next up, Consuming Ashes. 2 black for an instant. Exile target creature. If it had mana value 3 or less, you surveil 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like a C.
perfectly passable removal spell. I would bump it to like a C plus. I am a staunch hater of 4 mana black removal spell. Not staunch hater, that's a bit strong, but I think I'm lower on them than most people. But I do think Surveil 2 on some, like hitting some things and Surveiling 2, that's like decent upside.
Have you considered that the big things that you want to hit have ward now?
Ooh, that's a good call. Well, I can tell you arena drafters are going to draft this as a B plus. So, I'm going to stick with my C plus. I still think like it's a fine enough spell and there's enough upside.
Sure, I'll stick with my C.
Rooftop Assassin. 3 and a black for a 2/2 flash flying lifelink. A lot of keywords. Also an assassin, as the name would imply. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. So yet again, here's an upgrade on this kind of card.
Yeah, with lifelink.
Yeah, that pushes it over the top to being like, I think this card is it actually does get there. Not like an amazing card, but a playable one for sure.
Yeah, I have this as like another C.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Which is way better than these cards usually are.
Exactly. Yeah. No, C for Rooftop Assassin. I like it. Okay. Overzealous Muscle. 4 and a black for a 5/4 mercenary ogre. Whenever you commit a crime during your turn, it gains indestructible until the end of the turn. Yeah, who cares? It's a 5-drop that's not overly exciting. I think it's like a D.
Yeah, I
Cool.
think so too.
Ambush Gigapede. Here's kind of an interesting one. 4 black for a 6/2 flash. When it ETBs, target creature and opponent controls gets -2 until end of turn.
Yeah, this is another one where I'd rather they just like turn the knobs a little bit slightly differently.
Like a 5/3 or something.
Yeah, or like a mana less for a slightly smaller creature, or maybe like give it -3/-3. I think it's just too little for the amount of mana it is.
So I will give you a comparison. There was a card from Ikoria that it was exactly this, but like I think it was a 5/2 instead. And people underrated that card, and I think nobody had that card high on their like pick orders. And when data finally came out for Ikoria, that was actually a really good card, or like a fairly good card. So we have a comparison. We have precedent here for this card being solid. Ikoria wasn't that long ago, so I'm optimistic about this one. I think I'm gonna give it kind of like a, put in some feelers out there, maybe about a C. But I could be wrong on this, and this could just be like a false comparison. But I think this effect's actually not that bad. Like, it flashes in, it kills something, or you get to win a combat, and it kills something else. Like, usually, it's not that hard to get a 2-for-1.
Okay. I don't know if I'm convinced.
Okay, yeah, like
I'm gonna go D plus.
I'm not even convinced. I'm just kind of putting it out there. So yeah, you wanna give it a D plus?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my C, and we'll see where it lands. Okay, bring us some uncommons now. Forsaken Miner. Single black mana for a 2/2 skeleton rogue. It can't block, and whenever you commit a crime, you can pay black. If you do, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, can't block really is a terrible line of text, but comes back a lot. You want to be sacrificing this to really be happy about it.
Well, so there's ways to sacrifice it. There's also mercenaries to make it more likely to attack. Even like the assassin we just saw that like picks off a creature after it blocks. There's a lot of ways to turn this. It's got types. It's repeatable. I think this card's pretty good.
Yeah, no, me too. And the types thing is relevant because like whenever you cast a mercenary, like this is an outlaw. This is an outlaw. You can keep casting over and over and over and trigger your things, right? Yeah, I am definitely higher on it than these cards. I usually am on these cards. What do you want to give it?
I was gonna go B minus.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm on board with that. I can
Yeah.
totally buy that. We've got a spree card here. Unfortunate accident. Single black mana for an instant. Spree plus 3 mana, but unlike other ones, it actually has a colored cost in it. Plus 2 and a black. Destroy target creature. So you've got 4 mana, destroy target creature, plus an additional mana, create a mercenary token.
Yeah, I like this a heck of a lot more than the 4 mana exile thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, this one's really really strong. Yeah, I mean not much to hate about it. B minus. You want to go to B maybe? I actually think
I'm
it's
gonna go
probably
to B on this.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah,
Got some flexibility. Yeah.
making any body is usually pretty substantially good. Binding Negotiation. 1 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You can choose a non-land card from it. If you do, they discard it. Otherwise, you put a face-up exiled card they own into their graveyard. So you kind of get to nab their plot cards. It's a removal spell for plot cards.
Which is like big.
Yeah, no, it really is. And you're going to get a mana advantage on that too, quite a bit, right? Because like a lot of the plot things are like 3, 4, very few of them are 2 mana. So this card's actually pretty good, I think.
Yeah, and like you still get to look at their hand if you take the plot card, which is also very, very relevant.
Yeah, this is nice. Still can't give it like too high of a grade, but
no, it's still like a 1/1 for 2 mana that adds nothing to the board.
Yep, I'm gonna give it a C.
Yeah, C sounds fair.
Cool. Blood Hustler up next. 1 and a black for a 1/1 vampire rogue. Whenever you put a crime, you put a counter on the Blood Hustler, only once per turn, and it has a activated ability. 3 and a black. Target opponent loses a life, and you gain a life.
Yeah, it's a little small to start off.
Quite small to start off.
It is going to be pretty easy to trigger.
Yeah, I think so. So if you can get it to 2/2, like let's say you like turn 3, you play this, play a tap land. It's a 2/2. They can block. I feel like a lot of these cards that are kind of like this don't get to block very often. And that drain ability is kind of nice. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Like it definitely gonna have games where your opponent's just like, I have to kill that thing. The game's going on. They're just gonna drain me out. It's getting big, but it's also yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's still pretty understated.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big knock against it. I think I'm gonna go a bit conservative on this and give it like a D plus. Like there's upside here.
Well.
Yeah, upside here, but I think it's not gonna come to fruition all that often. We've got Lively Dirge up next. 1 and a black for sorcery with Spree. Plus 1 mana, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, and then shuffle. Plus 2 mana, return up to 2 creature cards with total mana value 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, so for 5 mana, you get to tutor like 4 mana worth of creatures out of your deck. Or just for 4 mana, reanimate 4 mana worth of creatures.
I'd like you to give the whole speech and grade on this first, because I think this might be one we disagree on as well.
Okay, I was gonna say it's gonna very much like I like this card when you've got good rares, basically, right? Like you've got good things to go tutor up. I don't like this card generically. Like I think a good way to look at these kind of cards is just like compare it to another creature. Like you just put a 4 mana creature in your deck or a 5 mana creature. That's probably gonna be better on average, right? The card quality in your deck is going to have a pretty meaningful effect on how much you like this card. If you've got good rares, good 2-drop rares, sure. If not, probably not that good. I'm sure there's like specific cards you can point to and be like, oh, it's really good at this. Like that's a really good cheap enter the battlefield effect. Disagree?
No, that's actually, funnily enough, that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Like if I've always been somewhat low on like demonic tutor type effects in limited, because the reason you're happy to pay 5 mana for your rare is because it costs 5 mana, not because it costs 7, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this card, I do think that if you have a rare that's specifically 4 mana that you're happy to tutor for, you'll play it. But I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, I can tutor up my my great 2-drop and bring back another 2-drop, or like my 3-drop and bring back a 1-drop. And not only does that have to be very specific lined up like best case scenario, but also you may not be able to do that until much later than turn 5.
Yeah.
So I think this card's going to be heavily overplayed, but I do think it's good if you have like a really good target to get for 4 mana.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly where I'd lean on it or land on it. So like a synergy grade maybe, like a synergy C plus.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds fair.
Okay, cool. Next up, we got Servant of the Stinger. This is 1 and a black for a 1/3 Death Touch. 2 mana 1/3 Death Touch is a nice stat line. It's a human warlock. Whenever Servant of the Stinger deals combat damage to a player, if you've committed a crime this turn, you can sacrifice it. And if you do, we were just talking about demonic tutors. If you do, search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
Yeah, so funnily enough, I think people are gonna sacrifice this more than they
Way
should.
too often. Yeah, I was just gonna say, because like 1/3 Death Touch is such a good stat line.
Yes. Like if your 1/3 Death Touch was able to get in, like you know, there will be spots where you're gonna get a fantastic card and it's gonna be great, but you're giving up like yeah, it's basically you're giving up your 2 mana, the demonic tutor, and you're giving up your board presence. The nice thing about this though, you can let this trigger and then commit a crime, right? Like the way I'm reading that.
Deals combat damage to a player. If you've committed a crime this turn, you may sacrifice it. So it'll go on the stack, and then yeah, you guarantee you've dealt damage. I see what you're saying.
It'll still trigger even if you haven't, right?
Chat
Like
saying intervening if clause. Does that apply here?
Yeah, I don't know. So okay, so that kind of depends. It's worth talking about though, because this card definitely gets better if you don't have to decide whether you're committing your crime or not until you've actually connected. But I don't know if we're going to get a for sure answer on that.
Look, it looks
Must
like
crime before damage. Matt Sperling, I think I believe Matt Sperling.
Yeah,
so, okay,
I agree.
I lied, ignored all that, edited out of the YouTube.
Okay, but still good. Like I would give this card. Like you are gonna sacrifice it sometimes. Like we don't want to discount that. That's part of the card itself.
Yeah, it's still an upside, right? Like, and 1/3 Death Touch for 2 is. I mean, we've seen Finn do incredible work in a couple sets, and this is just a great stat line. So I want to give this like B minus.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say too. B minus for a Servant of the Stinger. It's a B, like a buzz B. Shoot the Sheriff up next. 1 and a black for an instant. Destroy target non-outlaw creature. And the flavor text that I have to shout out here: assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws. Everyone else is fair game. So gotta get the secret of its analysis in here. And how many things are outlaws in this set? It's a lot. They always print this kind of card. They're like, oh, haha, cheap back removal spell, but doesn't kill the thing that the set is about. And I think this one is worse than most of the versions of this we've seen because there's so many outlaws. I think it's about half.
Yeah, I think it's a little. I think it hits a little more than half the creatures.
Right. It's still good.
Yeah, it's still like a C type of card.
Yeah, still like a C.
Kind of reminds me of Go for the Throat in Brothers War.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. Yeah, it's
like you'd play it, and honestly, like you're probably not cutting this. Like it's probably a C plus. I'm gonna change my grade to a C plus, but it is going to be awkward a lot of the time.
I'm gonna stick on C. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see myself coming around to it's gonna be a bit of a vibes thing as we play a little bit more. Treasure Dredger up next. 1 and a black for a 2/2 human rogue. 1 tap, pay a life, make a treasure token.
That's not a real ability.
No, like you get to pay a life to bank a mana. Well, if you're splashing, it's not the worst way to splash, right?
It's pretty bad.
Is it that bad? Like, it's a 2/2 that, like, kind of think of this as like a Grave Strider, kind of, right? That you have to pay a life on. But it's a 2/2, and sometimes you care about making a token. It's a rogue. Mark's giving a stank face, just like, I don't know.
I'm not buying it. Like, this thing just looks like the definition of the 2-drop that always ends up in your sideboard.
Right. Yeah. So you want to give it a D then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a D plus. I think it's slightly better. Like niche application D plus. You know, not just generic D plus. Yeah. All right. Neutralize the guards up next. 2 and a black for an instant. Creatures target opponent controls get -1, -1 until end of turn. You surveil 1. So kill all those
Yeah.
mercenaries.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually hit as much in this set as it would in some other sets.
It's true. Use it in combat though, right? It's relevant in combat.
I just think it's going to be hard to create a spot where you're going to get be happy to spend 3 mana on this.
Yeah. And this fail too.
I
Something
kind of want to give it like a sideboard grade.
I would give it a sideboard grade too. Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny, the the last version of this card that this is strictly better than it was called Make Obsolete, which is very funny. Anyways, next card here, Rakish Crew. 2 and a black for enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you make a mercenary token, and whenever an outlaw dies that you control, you drain your opponent for 1. They lose a life, you gain a life.
I'm not much about this either. Do you like this card?
I do. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. So it's definitely a build around synergy. You need your deck to be good for it. You need to have mostly mercenaries, but I think it's a good effect. What's got you down on it?
I don't want to cast this on turn 3. And if I'm holding it till later than that, I just feel like there's more impactful stuff you could be doing.
I don't love it, but I think it's a solid card. Like I would give this like the C+ grade if you're not cutting this from like a deck that is fine for it. Basically, has enough mercenaries, or sorry, has enough outlaws.
So someone from chat just said that Shoot the Sheriff misses on 43% of the creatures. So that means only 43% of the creatures in the set are actually outlaws for this to help you out. Well, and obviously, like more of those are going to be in black and the colors that you're going to pair this with.
And not quite, because there are I think a good handful of the creatures that make mercenary tokens are not outlaws.
Isn't that make this
like they make them? No, I'm saying if you're using that analysis of 43%, that's not factoring in the tokens, right? Of like a creature that's not an outlaw making a mercenary token, so that will count too.
Okay, sure, but a lot of I know at least a couple of the cards that make mercenaries are also outlaws. But yeah, sure. I mean, draining is powerful. We've talked about this already. The ability, this card will win games for sure. I just don't think it's a great card for me. Like I was gonna give it like a C-.
Okay, so we differ here a little bit. I'm just gonna give it a C+, and we'll see where it lands.
Okay.
Rattleback Apothecary. 2 and a black for a 3/2 Gorgon Warlock with Death Touch. 3 mana for a 3/2 Death Touch. Whenever you commit a crime, target creature you control gains your choice of menace or lifelink until end of turn. Notably, this isn't a once per turn thing, so you actually get to do multiple things here.
Yeah, you will. Like the abilities it gives are not that combat relevant. Like you if you were going to give menace to something, you're going to do it. It's not like, hey, surprise,
yeah,
you got menace to combat, I got you. So it's not that interesting, but I do like both of the abilities. And lifelink, again, we just talked about how many lifelink cards there are in this set. Lifelink is a very powerful ability, and there's mercenaries to keep pumping things power to get even more out of it.
Yeah. No, this one seems pretty good for me. Or good to me. I would give this like a C+.
Yeah, I'm there too.
Cool. Unscrupulous Contractor. 2 and a black for a 3/2 human assassin. When it enters the battlefield, you can sack a creature. When you do, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life, and it's also got plot for 2 and a black. Yeah, that's a pretty nice one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, again, a card that I think will make its way into like the blue-red. Like anything that plots for less than 4 already gets a boost in my mind. Because it curves into Loan Shark or the Crom or whatever it is.
Sorry, like you mean like a red black or a blue black deck? You're not going to splash this in like your blue red deck necessarily, right?
Honestly, I'm not going to keep it. I think the fixing is so good in this set. I'm not going to say.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. This one is it's kind of just like exploit exactly. You want to give this a? I'm going between C+ and B- here. I think it's probably closer to a B- than a C+.
Yeah, I think there's just some good things to sacrifice
Yeah,
for like
for
you have
sure.
your 1 mana 1/1, you have mercenary tokens. I think this card's pretty good. It might even be better than a B minus, but I think I'll give it a B minus as well.
Yeah, cool. We've got Rictus Robber up next. This is 3 and a black for a 4/3 zombie rogue. When it enters the battlefield, if a creature died this turn, you make a 2/2 zombie token. It's a zombie rogue token, and it's got plot for 2 and a black.
Yeah, so the design behind this, you can kind of understand why the plot's cheaper because it's like, well, okay, if your opponent knows this is coming, they won't block, so you
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to trigger it. But it's pretty easy to just plot this on turn 3 and turn 4 cast like a removal spell and kind of go ham, right?
Yeah, totally. No, I think this card's good. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one of your creatures. It could be any creature, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give Rictus Robber like a C plus. Maybe no, sorry, that's way too low. I'm gonna give it a B minus. That's
Yeah,
much better.
yeah, like plot for 3 again, it gets a boost. It makes 2 outlaws.
Yeah.
This is another one where I'm going to give it a B minus 2, but I could see us underselling this.
Yeah, no, me too. I agree with that. Okay, the last black uncommon here is kind of a banger. It says Hollow Marauder. 6 and a black for a 4/2 Spectre Rogue. It's got flying. And yes, 7 mana is a lot, but the spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. It also says when Hollow Marauder enters the battlefield, any number of target opponents each discard a card. For each of those opponents who didn't discard a card with mana value 4 or greater, you draw a card. So, I would say you're going to cast this on turn 5 fairly consistently. 2 things getting in your grave, especially in black, really not that difficult. Okay, so if we're just evaluating this as like a 5 mana, 4/2 flyer that makes them discard a card, they're either discarding a good card or you're drawing a card, and you're pretty happy with either of them. You can also like recur this. I don't know. I like this card a lot.
It's also like some of your opponent's top end is going to be spree cards, and they can't, like, that doesn't even.
Yeah, true. Really strong.
Yeah, this card is quite good. 4/2 is a little small,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be. There will be games and decks where you can cast this on turn 4, but it's not going to be easy to do. Like,
No, agree.
I think it's a lot safer to say this is a 5-drop than ever counting it as a 4-drop on your curve. Even if you have like a couple of those mill guys, it's probably still unlikely. But this is a powerful ability, and I'm going to be pretty happy to play this most of the time.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a B minus.
Yeah, I think just 3 in a row, B minus, B
Nice.
minus, B minus.
All right.